Spring 1991, Taos, New Mexico. Hundreds of people started hearing a sound that drove some to madness and others to abandon their homes forever. Yet, when scientists brought their best equipment to record it, their machines detected absolutely nothing. What happens when thousands of sane, healthy people hear something that science says doesn't exist? Spring came to Taos, New Mexico in 1991, like it always did. The snow melted off the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The air smelled like pine and sage. Artists opened their gallery doors. Tourists started arriving to see the old adobe buildings and buy paintings. Everything seemed normal in this small town of 5,000 people. But something was very wrong. It started quietly. A few people here and there calling the police, then a few more, then dozens. They all said the same thing. They could hear a noise, a low hum, like a big truck engine running somewhere far away. But the sound never stopped. Not during the day, not at night, not ever. The police didn't know what to do. They drove around looking for running trucks or machines. They found nothing. They told people it was probably just the wind or maybe their refrigerators. The calls kept coming. By summer, more than 100 people in Taos were hearing it. These weren't just a few confused neighbors. They lived in different parts of town. Some lived near the center where the shops were. Others lived way out in the desert, where the nearest house was a mile away. Rich people heard it. Poor people heard it. Young people and old people. It didn't matter. The sound they described was always the same. A deep hum between 32 and 80 vibrations per second. That's very low, lower than most sounds humans can hear. It sounded like a diesel engine idling in the distance. But here's what made it strange. The sound was louder inside their homes than outside. When they went outdoors, it got quieter. When they went back inside, it got louder again. That's the opposite of how normal sounds work. Night was the worst time. When the town got quiet and everyone went to bed, the hum seemed to grow. People lay in their beds, staring at the ceiling, listening to this drone that wouldn't stop. Some put pillows over their heads. Some stuck their fingers in their ears. Nothing helped. The sound seemed to come from inside their own heads. Sarah Miller was one of the first to hear it. She was 53 years old and had lived in Taos her whole life. She worked at the post office. She knew everyone in town. One night in March, she woke up at 3 a.m. There was a sound, a deep rumbling that seemed to fill her whole bedroom. She got up and walked through her house, trying to find where it was coming from. The kitchen, the living room, the bathroom. Everywhere she went, the sound followed her. Her husband was asleep in bed. She shook him awake. "Can you hear that?" she asked him. "Hear what?" he said. "That humming sound," she told him. He listened. He heard nothing. "Go back to sleep," he said. "You're dreaming." But Sarah wasn't dreaming. The sound was real, and it never went away. By May, Sarah had stopped sleeping more than 2 or 3 hours a night. Her head hurt all the time. She felt pressure behind her eyes, like someone was pushing on her skull from the inside. Her nose started bleeding for no reason. She went to the doctor. The doctor checked her ears. They were fine. He checked her blood pressure. It was a little high, but nothing serious. He asked if she was stressed. She said yes, because of the sound. "What sound?" he asked. She tried to explain. He gave her pills to help her sleep. The pills didn't work. The sound was still there. The local newspaper ran a story in June. Over 160 people in Taos were now reporting the hum. The reporter talked to a dozen of them. They all told the same story, a low droning sound, louder at night, louder indoors, drove them crazy, made them sick. The newspaper asked the mayor what was being done. The mayor said they were looking into it. He said it was probably some kind of equipment at the power plant or maybe the phone lines. Engineers checked the power plant. Everything was normal. They checked the phone lines. Everything was fine. The official explanation was simple. These people had tinnitus. That's when you hear ringing in your ears, even though there's no sound. Or maybe it was all in their heads. Mass hysteria. One person thinks they hear something, then everyone else starts thinking they hear it too. The health department closed the cases. Problem solved. Except the problem wasn't solved at all. The people hearing the hum weren't crazy. They weren't making it up. Among them were college professors, engineers, scientists, former military officers, people who understood sound and how ears work. People who had been trained to observe things carefully and report exactly what they saw and heard. These were not the kind of people who imagined things or jumped to wild conclusions. One of them was a man named Dr. Joe Mullins. He was a professor of engineering at the University of New Mexico. He taught classes about machines and how they work. He understood physics and sound waves and vibrations. When he first heard about the Taos hum, he thought it was nonsense. He drove to Taos in July to prove everyone wrong. Dr. Mullins met with the people who claimed they could hear the hum. He interviewed them one by one. He asked them detailed questions. What does it sound like? When did you first hear it? Is it always the same? Does anything make it better or worse? He took notes. He listened carefully to their answers. Then something happened that Dr. Mullins did not expect. He started hearing it too. It happened on his third day in Taos. He was sitting in a hotel room, writing up his notes. It was late afternoon. The sun was still out. He heard it. A low hum, deep and steady, like a motor running somewhere beneath the floor. He stood up and walked around the room. The sound was everywhere. He went outside. The sound got quieter, but didn't stop. He went back inside. There it was again, louder than before. Dr. Mullins was a scientist. He didn't believe in things he couldn't measure and prove. But now he was hearing something that shouldn't exist. Something that no equipment could find. Something that seemed to violate everything he knew about how sound works. He spent the next week trying to find the source. He drove all over Taos with measuring equipment. He tested for vibrations in the ground. He checked for radio waves in the air. He measured the electrical power running through the wires. He found nothing unusual, nothing that could explain the sound. Other scientists came to help. Engineers from Los Alamos National Laboratory arrived with their best equipment. Los Alamos was only about 50 miles away. It was where they built the first atomic bomb back in the 1940s. Now they studied all kinds of secret things. If anyone could find this mysterious sound, they could. They set up their machines all over Taos. Sensitive microphones that could pick up sounds too quiet or too low for human ears. Devices that measured vibrations in the earth. Instruments that detected electromagnetic fields. They ran tests for weeks. They recorded everything. The results came back in September. The machines had found nothing. No unusual sounds. No strange vibrations. No odd electromagnetic signals. According to the equipment, there was no hum. But the people could still hear it. Dr. Mullins could still hear it. And that's when everyone realized something terrifying. They were dealing with something that science could not detect. Something that existed in a way that didn't follow the normal rules. something that shouldn't be possible. The official explanation had failed. The idea that this was just tinnitus or mass hysteria didn't make sense anymore. Too many people heard it. Too many credible witnesses. Too many failed attempts to find a normal cause. The cracks in the official story were getting bigger, and then someone discovered something that made everything worse. The Taos hum wasn't just in Taos, it was everywhere. When the federal government gets involved in a mystery, you know it's serious. In 1993, 2 years after the hum started, Congressman Bill Richardson demanded answers. He represented New Mexico in Washington. His office was getting dozens of calls every week from people in Taos who were desperate for help. Some were talking about moving away. A few were talking about worse things than that. Richardson called for an official investigation. Not just local police or state health workers, the full power of the federal government. A team was put together. Scientists from Los Alamos National Laboratory, sound experts from Sandia National Laboratories, another big research facility in New Mexico, professors from the University of New Mexico, doctors who studied environmental health. They had one job: find out what was causing the Taos hum and make it stop. The investigation began in the fall of 1993. The team started by talking to everyone in Taos, all 5,000 people. They went door to door with questionnaires. Can you hear an unusual sound in your home? If yes, describe it. When did it start? How often do you hear it? Does it bother you? The questionnaires came back. Out of 1,440 people who responded, 161 said yes. They could hear the hum. That's about 2%. Not a huge number, but not tiny either. In a town of 5,000, that meant about 250 people total were probably hearing it. The team brought these hearers in for testing. Medical doctors examined their ears. Hearing specialists put them in soundproof rooms and played different frequencies to see what they could detect. Psychologists asked them questions to check their mental health. The results were strange. All of the hearers passed their hearing tests with normal results. Their ears worked fine. Some could even hear better than average. There was nothing wrong with their eardrums or the tiny bones inside that carry sound. There was no fluid buildup, no damage, no infection, nothing. The mental health tests came back normal too. These people weren't depressed or anxious before the hum started. They didn't have a history of hearing voices or seeing things that weren't there. They weren't on drugs. They didn't drink too much. They were just normal people living normal lives until this sound appeared. The ages of the hearers ranged from 24 years old to 78, but most of them were between 50 and 59 years old. Nobody could explain why middle-aged people heard it more than young people or really old people. The hearers worked all kinds of jobs: teachers, store clerks, artists, ranchers, construction workers, retirees. There was no pattern to their professions or their health history. Where they lived in Taos didn't matter either. Some lived right in the center of town near the plaza. Others lived miles out in the desert. Some lived in new houses. Some lived in old adobe homes that were 200 years old. Rich neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods. It made no difference. The team set up their equipment next. They placed sensitive microphones in 30 different locations around Taos. Downtown, in the residential areas, out in the empty land where nothing but sagebrush grew. They left the microphones running for days, recording every sound. Trucks driving by, dogs barking, wind blowing, airplanes overhead, birds singing, everything. They brought in machines that could detect sounds below 20 vibrations per second. That's lower than human ears can normally hear. They brought devices that measured vibrations traveling through the ground. Maybe the hum was coming from underground. Maybe there was a crack in the earth that was making the rocks vibrate. The machines would find it. They checked the power lines. Electricity running through wires creates a hum at 60 vibrations per second. Maybe people were hearing that. They measured the electromagnetic fields around every power line in town. They checked the big transformers on the poles. They tested the power plant. Everything was normal. The power lines were humming at exactly 60 vibrations per second, just like they should. But the people were hearing something between 32 and 80 vibrations per second. It didn't match. The team investigated the military bases. There were several within 100 miles of Taos, Los Alamos, Sandia, White Sands, Kirtland Air Force Base. These places did secret work. Maybe they were testing some kind of new weapon or communication system. Maybe they were sending out radio signals that some people could hear. The military said no. They checked their records. Nothing unusual was happening in 1991 or 1993. No new tests, no strange equipment running. The team had to take their word for it. The military doesn't share all its secrets. They looked at factories and industrial buildings. Any big machine that runs all day and night could create a hum. They found a few possibilities: a water pump station, a sewage treatment plant, a small manufacturing building. They turned each one off for a day to see if the hum stopped. The hearers still heard it, every single time. Months passed. The team collected data and ran tests and interviewed more people. They spent thousands of dollars on equipment and travel and expert consultants. By early 1994, they had checked everything they could think of. And they had found exactly nothing. The official report came out in late 1994. It was dozens of pages long. It confirmed everything the hearers had been saying. Yes, they really do hear a sound. No, they are not making it up. No, they are not mentally ill. Yes, the sound causes real problems. Headaches, trouble sleeping, nosebleeds, anxiety. But the report had no answer for the most important question. What is causing it? The conclusion was simple and terrifying. The source of the Taos hum remains unidentified. After a year of investigation by some of the best scientists in the country, using the most advanced equipment available, they could not tell these suffering people what was making the noise in their heads. The case was closed, not solved, just closed. Local authorities had changed their tune by then. At first, the police and health department dismissed the complaints. They thought people were being silly or looking for attention. But when the federal government showed up and confirmed the hum was real, suddenly, everyone took it seriously. The mayor started giving interviews saying how concerned he was. The health department offered counseling services, but offering sympathy isn't the same as offering solutions. One of the hearers was a man named James Kelly. He was 62 years old and had worked as an electronics engineer for 30 years before retiring. He knew about sound and radio waves and electrical signals. He understood science. When he started hearing the hum in 1992, he tried to find it himself. He built his own measuring equipment. He tested every electrical device in his house. He checked the wiring. He called the power company. He did everything the official team would later do. He found nothing. James kept a journal of his experiences. He wrote down when he heard the hum and how loud it seemed. He noted what he was doing when it got worse or better. He recorded his symptoms. The constant headache that felt like a metal band tightening around his skull. the nosebleeds that started without warning, the crushing feeling in his chest when the hum was really bad, the nights he didn't sleep at all because the sound was too loud. After 2 years, James couldn't take it anymore. In 1994, he sold his house and moved to Colorado. He thought maybe the hum was something specific to Taos. Maybe it was the mountains or the altitude or something in the water. He bought a small house in a quiet town 300 miles away. The hum followed him. 3 days after he moved in, he heard it. The same deep drone, the same frequency, the same feeling of pressure in his head. He sat on his new porch and cried. There was no escape. That's when Dr. Mullins and his team started to suspect something bigger was happening. They began looking into reports of similar phenomena in other places. They found them, lots of them. In Bristol, England, people had been reporting a hum since the 1970s. Same description, low frequency, louder at night, louder indoors, drove people crazy. In the 1990s, people in Largs, Scotland, started hearing it. Then in Bondi, Australia, then in other cities and towns across the world, the exact same sound, the exact same symptoms, the exact same mystery. Each place investigated. Each place found nothing. Bristol brought in sound engineers from the university. They couldn't find it. Largs had the government investigate. No results. Australia sent scientists. Same answer. Nothing. Dr. Mullins realized they weren't dealing with something unique to Taos. This was global. Somehow, some way, people in dozens of different places on Earth were all hearing the same unexplained sound. And nobody, anywhere, could figure out what it was or how to stop it. The question wasn't just about Taos anymore. It was bigger. Why were people around the world hearing something that didn't show up on any machine? What had changed? The hum reports really picked up in the 1990s. Before that, there were only a few scattered cases. Was something new happening on Earth? New technology, new pollution, something in the air or the ground or space? One theory said it was military communication systems. The Navy uses very low-frequency radio waves to talk to submarines deep underwater. These signals travel through the earth and the ocean. Maybe some people's brains were picking them up somehow. The military denied it. Their systems had been running since the 1960s. Why would people suddenly start hearing them in the 1990s? Another theory said it was the earth itself. Microseisms. Tiny earthquakes too small to feel, but big enough to create vibrations. Maybe certain people were sensitive to these vibrations. But microseisms happen everywhere all the time. Why would they suddenly bother people only in certain towns? A doctor suggested it might be coming from inside people's ears, not outside. The human ear can create sounds on its own. Tiny cells in the inner ear sometimes vibrate for no clear reason. It's called autoacoustic emissions. But those sounds are usually very high-pitched, not low like the hum, and they don't affect multiple people in the same town at the same time. Every theory had problems. Every explanation had holes. The investigation had looked at everything science could think of and come up empty. The team wrote in their final report that the Taos hum was real and the hearers were credible and the suffering was genuine. But they had no answers. The case was never reopened. The federal government moved on to other problems. The scientists went back to their regular jobs. The equipment was packed up and taken away. The people of Taos were left alone with their mysterious sound and no help coming. The story should have ended there. An unsolved mystery, a strange case that scientists couldn't crack, something to talk about at dinner parties or read about in magazines. But it didn't end. It got worse. When the media found out about the official report in 1995, the news spread fast. Newspapers picked it up. Radio shows talked about it. TV news programs sent reporters to Taos. Soon everyone knew about the town where people heard a sound that didn't exist. At first, the coverage was curious and respectful. Look at this strange mystery. Scientists can't explain it. How interesting. Then the tone changed. Talk. Radio hosts started making fun of the hearers. They called them crazy. They said it was all made up for attention. Late-night comedians made jokes. What do you call people who hear voices? Schizophrenic. What do you call people in Taos who hear sounds? Tourists trying to seem interesting. The audience laughed. The hearers in Taos felt betrayed. They had gone through official investigations. They had been tested by doctors and scientists. They had been told their experiences were real, and now the whole country was laughing at them. Some stopped talking about the hum. They suffered in silence rather than face mockery. Families broke apart. Imagine living with someone who hears a sound you can't hear. Your wife lies in bed at night, hands over her ears, crying from the noise. You hear nothing. You tell her it's okay. It'll pass, but it doesn't pass. It never passes. Days turn into weeks, turn into months. She can't sleep. She can't work. She's miserable all the time. And you can't help, because you can't even hear what's hurting her. Some spouses were supportive. They believed their partners even though they couldn't share the experience. Others weren't. They thought their husband or wife was going crazy. They suggested therapy. They suggested medication. They suggested it was all in their head. Arguments happened. Trust broke down. Some marriages ended. A woman named Katie Jacques lost her job because of the hum. She worked at a bank in Taos. She had been there for 12 years. She was good at her job. But after the hum started in 1993, she couldn't focus. The sound was there all day, a constant drone underneath every conversation, every phone call, every task. She made mistakes. She forgot things. Her boss called her into the office. "What's wrong with you lately?" he asked. She tried to explain about the hum. He looked at her like she was insane. 2 months later, she was let go for poor performance. Other hearers had similar experiences. They tried to explain to their employers why they were tired or distracted or irritable. Most bosses didn't understand. A sound nobody else can hear isn't a valid excuse for missing work or making errors. Some hearers stopped mentioning it. They invented other reasons for their problems, family issues, medical conditions, anything that sounded more believable than an invisible hum. By the late 1990s, competing theories were everywhere. Everyone had an explanation. None of them agreed. The scientific theories tried to stay rational. Maybe it was autoacoustic emissions from people's own ears. Maybe it was very low-frequency radio waves from military bases that certain people's brains could somehow detect. Maybe it was tiny vibrations in the earth that only sensitive people could feel. Maybe it was all about psychology, the power of suggestion. One person thinks they hear something and tells their neighbor, and soon everyone thinks they hear it, even though it's not real. The alternative theories were wilder. Some people said it was secret government experiments, mind control devices being tested on small towns. Others said it was communication signals from underground military bases. Still others blamed new cell phone towers. Even though cell phones in the 1990s were rare and the towers didn't work on frequencies anywhere near the hum, the theories kept coming. People who believed the government was involved pointed to Los Alamos and Sandia and the other military facilities near Taos. These places do classified work. Maybe they're testing weapons that create sound waves. Maybe they're trying to develop new ways to communicate that can't be intercepted. Maybe the hum is an accidental side effect of something secret. The military denied everything. That just made people more suspicious. Scientists pushed back against the conspiracy theories. They said there was no evidence of secret experiments. They said very low-frequency radio waves don't work the way conspiracy theorists think they do. They said the hum couldn't be from cell towers because the frequencies don't match. But the conspiracy theorists didn't believe them. They said the scientists were part of the cover-up. Direct quotes from official reports started appearing in articles and documentaries. The 1994 federal report said clearly that the hearers were genuine and not the result of deception or psychological disorder. Dr. Mullins was quoted in a newspaper article in 1996, saying these people are suffering and some have thought about suicide and we have absolutely no answers for them. Those words were powerful. They showed that serious scientists took this seriously, even if talk show hosts didn't. The hearers themselves gave detailed descriptions of what they experienced. Katie Jacques told a reporter that the sound feels like someone pressing their thumbs into your temples, and the sound is inside you, and you can't escape it even when you leave the room. Others said the same thing. The hum wasn't just a noise. It was a physical feeling, a pressure, a vibration, something that made their whole body uncomfortable. 3 a.m. was the worst time for almost everyone. That's when the world is quietest. No cars, no people talking, no machines running. That's when the hum seemed loudest. Hearers would wake up in the middle of the night and lie there, listening to this drone that nobody else could hear. Some got out of bed and walked around their houses. Some went outside and sat in their yards. Some drove around town at 3 a.m. trying to escape. Nothing worked. They described the sensation as more than just sound. It was a feeling of pressure building in closed spaces. Like the air itself was pushing against their skin. Some said they could feel a vibration even though they couldn't see anything vibrating. They would put their hand on a wall or a table and swear they felt it shaking, but nobody else did. The health effects got worse for many people. By 2004, at least 3 Taos, residents had packed up and moved away for good. They couldn't take it anymore. Their mental health was falling apart. They were depressed, anxious, desperate. They left their homes and their friends and their jobs and moved to other states, hoping the hum wouldn't follow. For some it worked. For others, like James Kelly, it didn't. A study done in 2012 looked at hearers in multiple locations around the world, not just Taos, but Bristol and Bondi and other places. The study found that hearers everywhere reported the same health problems. They couldn't sleep. They felt anxious all the time. Many became depressed. And in the worst cases, they thought about ending their lives. The hum was more than an annoyance. It was destroying people. In Kokomo, Indiana, the hum became so bad that the city government spent $100,000 to investigate. That's a lot of money for a small city. They brought in engineers and scientists. They tested everything. They found 2 industrial sources that might be contributing: a cooling tower at a factory, an air compressor at another building. The city forced the companies to shut them down or modify them. The modifications were made. The equipment was quieter. The hum continued. The hearers in Kokomo still heard it. The expensive investigation had failed, just like the one in Taos. Windsor, Ontario had similar problems starting in 2011. People living near the Detroit River started reporting a hum, low frequency, constant, drove them crazy. The complaints got so loud that the Canadian government investigated. They thought maybe it was coming from factories across the river in Detroit. The US government investigated too. Both countries spent time and money trying to find the source. Both failed. No definitive answer. The hum kept going. By 2013, residents in Windsor were filing legal complaints. They wanted someone held responsible. They wanted the noise stopped. The courts didn't know what to do. How do you stop a sound that nobody can find? The cases went nowhere. Then, in 2015, something happened that changed everything. A researcher named Dr. Glenn McPherson created something called the World Hum Map and Database. It was a website where anyone anywhere could report if they heard the hum. You filled out a form describing your experience, where you lived, when it started, what it sounded like, how it affected you. The reports were collected and mapped. Within a few years, thousands of reports came in, then 10,000. People from every continent except Antarctica, cities and towns and rural areas, the United States, Canada, England, Scotland, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, India, Japan, everywhere. All reporting the same thing, a low-frequency hum, louder at night, louder indoors, makes them sick, never stops. Dr. McPherson analyzed the data. The reports were incredibly consistent. People who had never talked to each other, who lived on opposite sides of the planet, who spoke different languages, all describing the exact same sound in the exact same way. That's not mass hysteria. That's not coincidence. That's something real. The most terrifying discovery was this. The Taos hum wasn't unique. It wasn't even unusual. It was happening everywhere. And it was spreading. The number of reports kept growing. More people every year, more locations, more countries. Whatever was causing this wasn't limited to one small town in New Mexico. It was global. It was persistent. It showed no signs of stopping. And after more than 20 years of investigation by scientists and governments and universities across the world, nobody had any idea what it was or how to make it go away. Today, the Taos hum case sits in a file cabinet somewhere, gathering dust. The official status is unsolved, not under investigation, not a priority, just unsolved. The federal government isn't looking into it anymore. The state of New Mexico isn't either. Local authorities in Taos gave up years ago when people call to complain. They're told there's nothing that can be done. The case is closed even though the problem never went away. The scientific community moved on. There are papers written about the hum, articles in journals, references in textbooks about unusual acoustic phenomena. But nobody is actively researching it. There's no funding, no grants, no university departments dedicated to solving the mystery. It became a curiosity, a strange thing that happened that nobody can explain, like ball lightning or rogue waves, interesting but not urgent. Dr. Joe Mullins kept researching on his own time for years after the official investigation ended. He couldn't let it go. He had heard the hum himself. He knew it was real. He felt like he owed the hearers an answer. He studied new theories as they came out. He corresponded with researchers in other countries. He collected data, but he never found the answer. He died in 2009, still wondering what caused the sound that haunted so many people. The original hearers in Taos are older now. Many are in their 70s and 80s. Some have passed away. Those who are still alive still hear the hum. It never stopped for them. After more than 30 years, the sound is still there. Some learn to live with it. They use white noise machines to cover it up. They take medicine to help them sleep. They avoid quiet places where the hum seems loudest. They cope. Others never adjusted. They suffer every single day. New hearers keep appearing. Young people who weren't even born when the hum started in 1991 now report hearing it. People who just moved to Taos. People who've lived there their whole lives and only recently started noticing the sound. The hum doesn't care how old you are or how long you've been there. It finds you when it finds you. Support groups exist online now, websites and forums where hearers from around the world can talk to each other. They share coping strategies, ways to make the sound less bothersome, relaxation techniques, sound therapy, medications that help. Just knowing they're not alone helps some people. For 30 years, many hearers felt isolated and crazy. Now they can connect with thousands of others who hear the same thing. It doesn't stop the hum, but it makes it more bearable. Taos itself hasn't changed much. It's still a small, artistic town in the mountains. Tourists still come to see the galleries and the old pueblo and the dramatic landscape. Some visitors come specifically because of the hum. They want to see if they can hear it. They walk around town, listening carefully. Most hear nothing. A few do. They usually leave quickly. The town doesn't advertise the hum. It's not good for tourism to be known as the place where people hear mysterious sounds that drive them insane. But everyone who lives there knows about it. It's part of the town's history now, like the old church or the famous artists who painted there. The Taos hum is just another thing that makes Taos unique. Except this thing still torments people. So many questions remain unanswered. Why can only 2 to 4% of people hear it? What makes them different? Scientists tested the hearers in Taos and found nothing unusual about their ears or brains. They have normal hearing, normal brain function. So what's special about them? Why do they detect this sound when 96% of people can't? Why does it affect middle-aged people more than young or old? The data from Taos showed most hearers were between 50 and 59 years old. That pattern held in other locations too. Is there something about that age? Something changing in the brain or the ear? Nobody knows. Why can't machines detect it? We have equipment that can measure sounds far too quiet for human ears. Equipment that can detect vibrations too small to see. Equipment that can find radio waves and electromagnetic fields and seismic activity. All of that equipment was used in Taos and other places. None of it found anything unusual. How can a sound exist that humans hear but machines can't measure? It doesn't make sense according to physics. Is the hum environmental or inside people's heads? If it's environmental, it should show up on instruments. If it's inside people's heads, created by their own brains or ears, why do so many people in the same location hear the exact same thing at the same time? Why would their brains all malfunction in the same way? The biggest question is whether the hum is spreading. Looking at Dr. McPherson's World Hum Map, the number of reports keeps growing. Thousands of new reports every year. Does that mean more people are starting to hear it? Or does it just mean more people are reporting something that was always there? Are we documenting an existing phenomenon better or watching something get worse? Modern cases echo the Taos hum. Havana syndrome is one example. Starting in 2016, U.S. diplomats in Cuba reported hearing strange sounds and feeling sick. Headaches, dizziness, trouble thinking. Some had to leave their jobs. The government investigated. They thought maybe it was an attack, some kind of weapon that created sound or microwaves. They never found proof. The cases spread to other countries, China, Russia, other places. Hundreds of diplomats and intelligence officers reported similar symptoms. No explanation was ever confirmed. Wind turbine syndrome is another parallel. Some people who live near wind turbines report feeling sick. Headaches, sleep problems, anxiety. They say it's from the low-frequency noise the turbines make. Studies show the turbines do create low-frequency sound, but most people don't hear it or aren't bothered by it. Only a small percentage report problems, sound familiar. These cases suggest something important. Human beings don't all experience sound the same way. Some people are more sensitive to certain frequencies, maybe because of genetics, maybe because of something in their environment, maybe because of age or health or factors we don't understand yet. The Taos hum might be teaching us that reality isn't the same for everyone. What's real for you might not be real for your neighbor, not because one of you is wrong, but because your brains and bodies are different. That's an uncomfortable idea. And we like to think reality is objective, the same for everyone. But what if it's not? What if there are sounds and sights and feelings that only some people can detect? Things that exist, but that our instruments can't measure yet. Things that fall into gaps in our understanding of science. The Taos hum forces us to choose. Either dismiss thousands of credible witnesses as wrong, or mistaken, or crazy, or accept that something is happening that science can't currently explain. Most people find both options unsettling. Maybe the most disturbing part is this. We live in the 21st century. We have technology that can detect gravitational waves from black holes billions of light years away. We can split atoms. We can edit genes. We can send robots to Mars. But we can't identify or stop a sound that's driving people out of their homes. A sound that's been reported for more than 30 years. A sound that thousands of people hear right now as you read this. Someone in Taos is lying in B right now at 3 in the morning. The sound is filling their head. They're staring at the ceiling. Their spouse is asleep next to them, hearing nothing. They've tried everything. Earplugs, white noise, medicine, moving to a different room. Nothing works. They're exhausted. They're in pain. And they know that tomorrow night will be exactly the same. And the night after that, forever. Someone in Bristol is hearing it. Someone in Windsor. Someone in 100 other places you've never heard of. All of them hearing the same low drone. All of them suffering the same symptoms. All of them wondering why nobody can help them. Scientists who study the hum worry about something. What if the number of hearers isn't staying at 2%? What if it's growing? Slowly, quietly. What if more people start hearing it every year? The data from the World Hum Map suggests that might be happening. More reports, more locations, more people. There's no way to predict who will hear it next. No test, no warning signs, no way to protect yourself. One morning you might wake up and the world will have a new sound that wasn't there before. A sound that will never stop. A sound that nobody can help you with. You might think it won't happen to you. That's what everyone thinks. The people in Taos thought that too, until it did. The Taos hum doesn't need an explanation to be frightening. It doesn't need a source or a cause or a solution. It just needs to exist. And it does, right now, in dozens of countries, affecting thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands, and growing. The question isn't whether the hum is real anymore. That was settled decades ago. The question is what happens when the number of hearers keeps rising. What happens if it reaches 5% of the population? 10%? 20%? What happens when the people who can't hear it become the minority instead of the majority? What happens when the sound that shouldn't exist becomes the sound that nobody can escape? Sleep well tonight, while you still can.